All right, got some things getting in the way on your way home today. Right now, got a crash reported by police 440 eastbound at I-24. We've got one over on the East Bank going westbound near the Spring Street Ellington Parkway exit, and then 40 westbound at Fessler's Lane. In Williamson County, we've got a big one. Overturned vehicle blocking the left 3 lanes of 65 northbound right there at 840. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Matt Murphy Show. Matt's taking this Good Friday off. I'm Cameron Smith. We'll be with you for the next several hours. And, man, we got a fun show today. We're going to talk about due process, the Fourth Circuit, Good Friday, and anything else you want to talk about. And, oh, yes, for those of you who have been following Wasted Bacon, I'm looking at you, Jason. I wrote a song about you guys. About you guys. I was like, what is missing? Why am I not ready to publish these songs that everybody wants to hear so we can use the proceeds for a good cause? And it was because I did not have a song about the voices on the line. Now we do. And so hang around. It's coming. If you want to join the conversation, and by that I mean you want to join the conversation, 615-737-9986 on this fantastic Friday. 615-737-9986. Some of you guys don't know. You can text in. It's the same line to call in. So when you get all fired up and you want to holler, you can call. And that's entertaining for everybody. Most of all me. And so I'm very excited about that part of the show. We've got Ken Weaver back there with all kinds of news.
How about you, Brother Cameron?
And it's very exciting. It's Super Talk.
Super Talk.
Yep. And Chris Weber, he's got the board, man. There's dials and buttons and sliders and all kinds of stuff back there.
I don't even know what most of them do.
Right. There's stuff here that I'm always tempted to play with, and I don't because I want the radio to work. So I'm very excited about that. But as we get started, as I do every time I fill in for Matt or anybody else, I've never liked this idea of not knowing where folks are coming from. I don't think it's right. I think when you're talking to people, you should let them know where your paycheck comes from, what you're doing. So I like to do that. My day job is working with the fantastic folks at Thanks, where they help businesses grow through gratitude. It's like Starbucks coffee for the week, you know, that kind of thing, to people that you enjoy working with. And that's what I do. It's pretty cool to work with people who want to promote gratitude. It's really hard not to like that, right? I also am a columnist and on the editorial board over at the Tennessean. I appreciate each and every one of you reading what I have over there and yelling at me when you disagree with it. And frankly, a lot of you guys have been great because, as you can imagine, when I write conservative things at the Tennessean, there are some folks of a liberal persuasion that get their hackles up. And having some of you guys say some nice things really is encouraging to me, so I really appreciate that. Also a partner in a media company. We made the Ballad of Davy Crockett. A lot of you guys have watched that, and I appreciate that as well. And finally, at D. Cameron Smith on Twitter. X. I'm never going to be able to say X first. It is just the weirdest thing to say a letter. But at D. Cameron Smith, a great place for you to holler at me, and then hashtag TN Politics. I know that a lot of us, we got frequent flyers. I know you guys, right? Let's keep the conversation going in the family when we're not on the air. And that hashtag TN Politics, when you post, helps everybody see the same thing, even if you're not following each other. So give it a look-see. Lastly, as far as the way of pleasantries, I told you guys that we had a coaching vacancy at Nolensville High School. We now have a new coach. The former coach, actually, of Independence, Scott Stidham, is coming over to Nolensville. We are very excited to have him. I'm very excited because I will have 4 boys on the football team next year. Ooh. 4 boys. And he is taking the time to meet with players individually, get to know them, since he's the new guy. And I think that matters, and hopefully he brings some discipline to the program and help build on what Coach Derek had started. I think we got a lot going on. And I got to be honest, I went down to A-Day in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I know for you Vol fans, that's offensive. But I missed football, man. I love football so much. And to be able to go see, it was just a practice. That's all it was. And to be thinking about football, the boys and I are working out in the garage, getting really excited about football coming up. And so I know a lot of you guys are too. Again, always looking for children of unusual size, the cusses. You got any cusses, let me know, because, if they want to play football in Nolensville, we're going to have some fun. I always like my big guys. And remember, that kid with the bag of potato chips on the sofa, that could be a future All-American lineman. I'm just saying. And if you don't kick their butt out and tell them they got to get moving, you're going to hurt them. So I would very much encourage you to do that. One of the other things that was super exciting, a friend got me a new pistol. It was this 5.7 by, I think it was 28 millimeter pistol. And I went and shot it with my boys this morning, and it was the most fun that I've had in a long time. I mean, we blew through the rounds, and I don't even want to think about how expensive that was.
Yeah.
But just doing a little plinker target practice out at my parents' farm, it was so much fun. So much fun. And I would encourage you folks. We talk about the Second Amendment all the time and how important it is and how we respect it and we love it. Have fun with guns. I know that sounds kind of strange in 2025, but teach your children to respect guns. Teach them to use firearms appropriately. Teach them the proper grip. Teach them how to present that firearm. Those things are useful life skills. I feel the same way about hammers, oddly. If your child cannot use a hammer effectively, you may not be doing it right. You need to teach them. And so this isn't just a thing that we say we love the Second Amendment. We need to actively teach and train folks how to use firearms, how to engage in firearm sports, and actually self-defense. If you don't know how to use a firearm and it's scary, at some point somebody's going to go buy one and say, well, I need it for self-defense. And you know what? One of the most dangerous things in the world is a firearm that you don't know how to use in your home. And so there's so many different gun ranges and stuff like that around here that will teach you. There's so many different courses. Learn it and teach your kids. David on the Super Talk text line said 5.7 millimeter ammo is ridiculously expensive. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. They are very proud of it. It's a glorified 22. It's like a 22 on steroids, but oh buddy, they are excited. So all I know is that when the zombie apocalypse happens, I'm going to be ready. And, so are my boys. But we got to teach our kids this stuff. I've realized this. If we don't, it's a drop-off, right? And at some point, you get to the point where nobody owns a gun. Nobody hunts. And then that means there's a lot of people that don't support the Second Amendment anymore. The guns are scary. My wife was that way. She thought guns were scary. So I got a 22 rifle and some Jet Puff marshmallows and threw them out back, and she started blowing them up. And she was like, this is a lot of fun. And I said, is it that scary? Well, no. And the reason she was scared is because she'd never used a gun. And so when you teach people and they understand that if I treat these with respect, I treat them safely, then I don't have to be fearful of them. And the fear is what leads people to ban scary guns. You know, that's the reason so many liberals look at AR style rifles and say, well, these have no business in the hands of law abiding citizens. You know what they're really saying is, I don't know how this works, and that's a scary looking gun. And we need to be mindful of that. And the more that those of us who respect the Second Amendment and enjoy sport shooting and self-defense training and stuff like that, the more we bring people into the fold, the better off we're going to be. So, you know, I'll get off my soapbox on that, but I think it's a really important one for all of us to know. My dad, I was there for my dad's birthday, and I want to tell you guys something. You guys are excellent. Some of y'all, I gave out his phone number, I don't know, a year ago, and some of y'all had it and remembered his birthday and texted him on his birthday.
That's pretty cool.
So I am so proud of you. You guys are awesome. For those of y'all who want to get in on the act, he's at home eating cake, not paying attention right now. 615-504-2741. Tell Sid happy birthday. I would be shocked if a bunch of y'all haven't already met my dad. My dad is the guy that when he sits down next to you, he's going to talk to you about football or Jesus, and probably both. And he has taught me so much about relationships and connecting and, you know, being flexible and working with different kinds of people. He was a sales guy for GE for a long time, sold all kinds of CAT scans and MRIs, but it wasn't about all that stuff. It was about the relationships. And to this day, he values people so much. And so giving him a shout out, whether you know him or not, Sid Smith, as I call him Dad, I'm just glad that he's around. It was a touch and go several years ago with heart surgery. Well, what's his number again? 615-504-2741. It's Sid Smith. And he'd like to think he's 25. But, you know, I'm proud of my dad. He is such a good dude. And that's what I want to strive for. As a father, I want to connect, and I want my boys someday say, you know what? I knew a couple of things. My daddy loved me, and he loved Jesus too. And if that's all they say, we're good, because that's what I'm trying to convey to them. And man, some days with all the teenagers in my house, it's tough. So, you know, my dad did a good job. He continues to do a good job, continues to be a great grandfather to my sons. And so I'm excited. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you reaching out. Well, let's see. Before we really kick things off and start kicking the hornet's nest, we're going to take a break. And then when we get back, we'll talk briefly about Good Friday, because I think it's real important that we're here, that we acknowledge the day and have a conversation about it. So we'll take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Sean Diddy Combs loses a bid to delay his trial. That story and more at 3:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
That's kind of an interesting musical sound.
You like that?
Yeah. I don't know. It kind of tickles. All right. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to the Matt Murphy Show. Matt's off enjoying his Good Friday. And I was thinking about what's the best way to talk about and succinctly explain Good Friday. And I decided my friend Billy Graham did it better than I could.
He went to the cross, and on the cross he was dying for the sins of the world, and God took all of our sins and laid them on him. And when he was on that cross, your sins and my sins were upon him. He became guilty for all of my sins. And they put him in a grave, and he rose again. This is the Christ that changed my life. This is the Christ that has changed thousands of men and women. This is the Christ that says, I'll come and help you in your race problem. I'll help you with your crime problem. I'll help you with your poverty problem. I'll help you in this tension in your home. I'll help you in your business. I'll help you overcome that habit that's binding you in chains and ropes that you cannot break. I'll give you assurance that your sins are forgiven. I'll reconcile you to God. This is the Christ that calls you tonight.
Yeah. That's pretty straightforward. And, you know, as I've written, I've been critical of the church. The fog machines and skinny jeans aren't really my jam, but the gospel is. And one of the things that I'd say in this culture that's crazy, and you guys know it, we are hollering and getting upset about everything. You know, we have an example before us that I think many of you guys who can hear the sound of my voice claim to follow. And it is a sacrificial type of example. It wasn't a leader. He wasn't a leader who came in wielding a sword, slashing everybody. He didn't come in punching. It was, I love you enough that I'm going to die for you. That I will give myself up for you because I care for you. And in the political space, I don't bow the knee for anybody. I've criticized folks on the Republican side of the aisle for bending the knee to Trump. But I do know that every knee will bow and every tongue is going to confess that Jesus Christ is Lord one way or another. And I am not ashamed of the gospel. I think it is a chain-breaking kind of salvation. And I understand that on a Good Friday, we're thinking Easter Bunny and all kinds of fun stuff. But I think that sacrificial love example is something that we should contemplate for just a minute as we're winding down the workday, as we're thinking about joining friends and family. We're thinking about those Easter services. He is risen, but before he rose, he died. He gave that sacrifice. And I see a lot of pain. I don't know about you guys, but I see a lot of people scared. A lot of people got a lot going on. And there is a heaviness in the culture, in the air. And there's a lot of people looking for all kinds of answers. And I'll tell you for me, that the simple, clear message of the gospel is one of the most stabilizing and powerful things in my life. And it's so much so that with my sons, I want them to know one of the things we practice, and that when you ask them, I expect them to be able to deliver, is the Roman road. Romans 3:23, 6:23, 5:8, 10:9, 10:10. And I think Romans 5:8 is the one that really kind of anchors it for me. And I think about it because we always start the boys off when they're little. We just say, but God. But the verse says, but God showed his love for us in this. while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And I think that's something that we need to consider in our political climate, in our communities. You want to fix a whole lot of things when people are struggling, just love them. Open up your table, unlock that door, have them come in. You know, my family has a motto, families who shows up. And I'll tell you what, I've had a lot of weird people, a lot of great people, a lot of sad people, a lot of happy people show up and sit at my table. And you know what? It can change lives if you just love people. And I don't mean like the squishy kind of love you see in those rom-coms. I mean, you feed them, you spend time with them, you enjoy them. And it is difficult because you have to share your lives. You have to give up some of that space. And if I'm honest, a lot of people just make my skin crawl. I mean, it's all I can do to just put up with it. And then I remember Good Friday. And then I remember what was done for me. I was the one that drove the nails. I was the one that was unworthy. And Jesus said, my love is good enough for you. And I had a guy after my brother died, a guy named George Landahl. He said, in light of who God is, take a long, soft look at yourself. And that changed everything for me. I started to understand that as hard as I could be on myself, as much as I dogged myself, as much as I wondered about the what ifs and if I'd done stuff differently, it didn't matter to God. Like, my love is good enough for you. So don't hold yourself to a higher standard than I do. So I just wanted to get that out there because I think on Good Friday, it's real easy to just take a break, enjoy family, enjoy the food. But you need to think about why we're celebrating and what was done for you, because it was a really big deal. And Jason doesn't like the fog machines either. This is the Matt Murphy Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
.30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. In the Sean Diddy Combs trial, Combs' team losing a bid to delay the proceedings. Here's ABC senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katersky.
Going to start with jury selection May 5th. The judge denied a request from Sean Combs' legal team for a 2-month adjournment to try and resolve some evidentiary disputes. The judge said there was no reason that he saw that there needed to be that kind of a delay. Still plenty of time to prepare for trial.
The Attorney General of New Jersey suing online platform Discord over predator concerns on the popular app that includes chat options. The company defending its safety measures. Here's Michelle Franzen.
New Jersey's lawsuit alleges online platform Discord represented the app as safe for parents but exposed children to sexual and violent content. The lawsuit claims the app's design makes it easy for children to connect with other users, but also allows predators to lurk and target them, undeterred by the safety features Discord touts as reasons that parents and users should trust its app. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Over Warden Park in Royal Oak, Michigan. A helicopter rained thousands of marshmallows on eager kids for the annual Great Marshmallow Drop. Once they hit the ground, the race is on for hundreds of kids trying to collect as many as they could. I say kids.
Probably the most exciting part was seeing the helicopters. But once we saw the marshmallows drop, we got really excited. And, we joined the melee, and we managed to get one pretty easy.
Wonder if that guy was pushing kids out of the way. Children got to exchange their marshmallows at a nearby station for a prize bag that included water park tickets and a color your own kite. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News. All right, still got that crash reported by police, 440 eastbound near I-24, then 40 westbound at Fessler's Lane. A crash is partially blocking the ramp that is 40 westbound there at Fessler's Lane. In Madison, got a stalled vehicle on the right shoulder, 65 northbound at Briley Parkway, Ellington Parkway, exit 90AB. And in Williamson County, still got that overturned vehicle. They've got it off of the shoulder, so the lanes are open. But the backup is still going to be there. 65 northbound after Paytonsville Road, Goose Creek Bypass, exit 61. Traffic every 10 minutes, every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back, team. Appreciate you humoring my thoughts on Good Friday. Ronnie has been very patient, and he had some Easter thoughts. Ronnie, what you thinking?
Yes, sir. I just want to explain our Lord and Savior came to this world to save all mankind. he didn't come to us accept him, but he come that he accepts us after we repent. This Roman road of theory of coming down the aisle and repeating a prayer that a church tells you to pray, or a person tells you to pray, the pastor tells you to pray. It's your prayer between you and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and you seeing how sinful you are, and you repent in your words and your prayer.
Sure.
He's our high priest. He's our high priest. We don't sit in a room beside of a man that's got more sin in his heart than you do and confess to him. We confess to Jesus Christ. It is a gift from our Lord and Savior, our Father in heaven. It's through and by the grace of God, not of any goodness that we can do, not any works that we can do.
Right.
It's through and by repentance, and repentance only, and it is through and by God's grace that we are saved. And if you don't have that personal relationship with him, through and by the Spirit of God, then you don't have nothing. You can repeat words, say words, and you can try to do good, and you can give, and you can try to live right as much as you can, but you still short of the glory of God, because if you broke one law, you broke them all. That's and him going to the grave and rising in 3 days, coming up, defeating death, he went to the Father, and he placed his blood, his sacrifice on the throne for all humanity.
Well, Ronnie, you do know that when I'm talking about the Roman road, I'm not saying recite it. I'm saying you need to know what the Bible says, because what you're saying is in those verses.
What I'm saying is you can repeat words. And the way it is, I just see these people say, come down here and you believe in Jesus Christ. Yeah, it says the devils even believe, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't repent. But the thing of it is, a lot of people believe in Jesus Christ, but don't believe Jesus Christ for the full extent of surrendering their heart and giving it to the Lord. And it's through and by him placing that. Yeah, you see this picture of Jesus knocking on the door, and there's no doorknob. Yes, we got to open the door, let him in. We got to want him, but it's him accepting us and not us accepting him.
Yeah, but don't you think we should know what the Bible says?
Yeah, I sure do.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, Ronnie. Thanks for the call, and I think that's important. That's why, with my boys, I want them to know what they believe. Frankly, not just spiritually, but on all fronts. It's a huge problem we have. Just try this. Try this at home. Just say, what do you believe? Ask your kids. Ask your teenagers. Ask your college students. What do you believe? And they'll say, well, they'll look at you like you're from outer space. Like, what do you mean, what do I believe? What do I believe about what? What do you believe about what's important in life? What happens when you die? Do you have a soul? Start to ask some of those questions and see what kind of feedback loop you get. Because the attention treadmill that most of our children are on right now, they don't have time to think about anything. They hadn't just sit there and think about, well, I'm not going to be here forever. What happens? Do I just biodegrade? Is that it? I have a good run and then I'm worm food? And that's one of the things that has made a big difference in my family, is taking a minute to just ask some questions. Here's another one. What are your goals? What do you really care about? What matters to you? I'm telling you, when you start asking your kids some of these questions, at first it's going to be weird. And they're going to just look at you like you've lost your mind. But that's the problem. It's the problem with our culture. It is the problem with our politics. Is too many of us listen to our mamas when they said polite company doesn't talk about religion and politics. And now we got a whole bunch of people that don't know anything about religion and politics because they were being polite. And now they're a bunch of jerks because they didn't learn how to talk about those things in a civil manner. They didn't learn how to think deeply and speak less than they think. And we can change that. We don't have to. We're not hung up on it. We're not limited. But what happens to us is so many of us are just on the treadmill. I can hear it when I talk to some of you guys that you've been watching your phone and then you've been watching cable news, and it's just this one constant loop of your attention that's on a treadmill. And so when anybody just says stop and what about you? What do you think? It is just such a shocking sentiment. And so I'd highly recommend trying it. I'm watching the news right now, and Senator Van Hollen is speaking about Mr. Abrego Garcia and his visit in El Salvador. He was not initially allowed to sit down with him. Now he has been. And I think this is a topic that deserves a little bit of our attention. The Fourth Circuit. So let me set this up a little bit. Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia was one of the folks that was detained and deported to, I think it's CICOT, which is the El Salvador prison of some notoriety. And understandably, the federal government said, well, you do not have legal status to be in the United States. You are a citizen from El Salvador. We are deporting you to El Salvador. And oh, by the way, the protection order that prohibited you from being deported to El Salvador doesn't apply because MS-13 is an international terrorist organization of which you are a member. And that's open and shut for the federal government. They just said that's the way it is. This is what's happening. And now the federal government and the government of El Salvador have both basically said, we have no idea how we would get this guy back to the United States to have due process hearings. Literally, it is almost like they're just dumbfounded as to, well, where is he? What should we do? Who's in charge? No one knows. I guess he's stuck. And meanwhile, the federal government was sued. And I talked about this a little while back. I've written about it. I'm all about the Trump administration taking action on immigration law. I think it's essential. We are not in a situation where, frankly, we could afford to continue failing to enforce immigration law. And this goes way back to Reagan. I'm a Reaganite. I'm a Reagan baby. And I loved his brand of republicanism. It was something that I thought was so cool. The intellectual underpinnings of that movement were something that I studied as a younger man, and that really kind of was the linchpin for me of, hey, I need to be one of these conservatives. But when it came to immigration, Reagan struggled. You know, you can say he was duped, you can say he was wrong, but the bottom line was that sort of opened the door and in terms of lax immigration enforcement. And then ever since then, there's been a lot of reasons why we couldn't enforce the immigration law. It's just been one thing after another. Well, you know, humanitarian issues, asylum issues, it's really difficult. There's 11 to 12 million folks here without status. You know, we just can't practically blah, blah, blah. All y'all heard that. You've heard it for years. You even heard it through the first Trump administration. It didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, Trump wins the election and says, you know what? We're going to start deporting people. We're going to enforce the immigration law. And anybody who's saying he can't do that or shouldn't do that doesn't care about the rule of law. They just don't. Well, it's difficult. You bet it's difficult. You know what's super awful is that Congress has failed at its job for so long, and so many presidents have not enforced the law that people feel that they are entitled to break the law. So Trump starts enforcing it. Totally fine with all that. I think it's really, really important. The problem is that once we let me back up even a little more. The biggest problem is that Joe Biden was president. and was listless and did nothing. The inaction by the Biden administration on every front, from Afghanistan, you name it. This may not be popular, but I mean, but for the Fed being creative and helping to ease inflationary pressures, oh my goodness. Biden asleep at the wheel is putting it nicely. And Trump comes in, and that contrast is whiplash, right? He's enforcing the law. He is the bad guy because he's doing the thing. I understand it. If I was an immigrant here without status, here illegally, I'd be really annoyed because I may have been here for a long time and nobody messed with me. Now, this guy comes along and says, you know, what you did is against the law and I'm going to deport you now. Okay, so he's the bad guy. Then he gets sued. This is part of the process. Active executive branch gets sued. That's not a Republican or Democrat thing. Anytime the executive branch overreaches, like Biden on his student debt forgiveness plan, it gets sued. And then we're going to figure out in the courts, how should this go? How is this going to shake out? And that's where we find ourselves right now. Because the district court judge in Maryland said, you need to effectuate the return. I think she used both. She said facilitate and effectuate. The Supreme Court gets up to them. They kick it back to her saying, well, facilitating the return is what has to happen. But we got to be careful not to be too prescriptive and tell the executive branch how they have to do it. That's basically the gist of the Supreme Court's decision. And when we come back, I'll tell you sort of where we ended up, what we need to do about it, and then you guys get to yell at me for it. Should be exciting. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Davidson County property reappraisals. That story and more coming up at 4 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back. It's Matt Murphy Show. Before the break, I'd given y'all a breakdown of sort of the process that's happened here with Mr. Abrego Garcia. Long story short, he was detained, deported, then the administration was sued, saying, well, you got to give him the ability to challenge his deportation because there's this active order of protection from 2019 that says he can't be deported to El Salvador. The trial court heard it, said, you got to basically return him to the U.S. so we can have a hearing to figure this stuff out. The Supreme Court said, you have to facilitate it, but we need to be careful with the word effectuate. We can't be unduly prescriptive. The courts are a check, an important check on the federal government, but they aren't a policy-making body. They are not the executive branch. They are not there to tell them how they have to govern. They can say this is constitutional, this is not constitutional, here's generally what has to happen. But that's where the Supreme Court kicked it back. The trial judge said, okay, fine, I am directing you to bring him back. And then the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals took it up. The administration wanted them to basically block that, and they declined. And I think it's useful to read from that rather than me just saying, hey, here's what I think. Because a couple things. This idea of a rogue judge, we need to be real careful here. Because if by rogue judge you mean you don't like their opinion, that's what Democrats do. It's always a rogue judge if we disagree with the judge's opinion. That is not a rogue judge. That's just a judge. And if you don't like the opinion of the judge, we seem to have this like really weird view of the judicial branch all of a sudden. This is the same judicial branch that gave us things like Heller, which radically protected the Second Amendment. This is the same judicial branch that has repeatedly struck down liberal things that were well-intentioned, like Joe Biden's debt repayment, that weren't constitutional. That's the check. That's the job. That's what they're there for. They are the safeguard. And lately in the pundit class, we've taken to, well, they're activists. We have to stop them from going rogue. We must do this. Must we? Must we? You do remember we're conservatives, right? And we want a check on the federal government. We want something that slows the federal government down. And I hear some of y'all saying, get out of the way. Let the federal government do what it wants to do. Let Trump, he's got a job to do. Get out of the way. All right, but like what if that's AOC? You still feel the same way? How about Joe Biden? How about Bernie? Just get out of the way. The judiciary is just a needless block. 6776. Here we go. You are horrible. Who keeps hiring you? I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. You seem to be afraid to hear it. If the shoe's on the other foot, we're having a much different conversation. But we need to have this conversation in the family. And we've got to do it. And we will start at the top of the next hour really chewing through this because I want you to hear it straight from the appellate court's opinion. I'm Cameron Smith. This is Super Talk 99.7.
4 o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. And right now in Tennessee, people in Davidson County have begun getting their property reappraisals. Countywide, the median value increase is 45%. Here's Channel 4's Marius Payton.
The areas that saw the biggest increase were in Bellevue, Belmead, Old Hickory, and parts of southeast Nashville. The biggest increase was in the Forest Hills area. Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell says the rate will come down from what it's currently at. However, not everyone will benefit.
We expect across the board we should be able to set a historically low property tax rate, but also that an increase in property values will mean that some Nashvillians pay more in property taxes as a result.
Now, you can appeal the change of value in your property. They put the number to call on the notice letters. Now, there's a deadline to request a review, though. That's going to be May 9th, and you're going to hear about the findings of your review by June.
Bad news on this Good Friday for hundreds of families in Middle Tennessee. Saks Global Tennessee Fulfillment Center in Laverne says it's going to start a closure process that will impact 446 workers. Layoffs start in June. And in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, Combs' team losing a bid to delay proceedings. Here's ABC senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky with more.
Several of the alleged victims were allowed to testify under pseudonyms, not Cassie Ventura. She'll testify under her own name, but other alleged victims of Sean Combs's. And the judge is still waiting to rule on whether the video depicting Combs and Cassie in the Intercontinental Hotel from March of 2016, whether that can come in.
Terrible end to the week in South Carolina. Officials confirm a 13-year-old middle school student was killed while returning home from a field trip in Charlotte, North Carolina, after a school bus he was traveling on blew a tire and flipped on I-77 yesterday afternoon. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News. South Nashville got a crash 440 eastbound near I-24, then 24 eastbound at Murfreesboro Pike. Look for 65 southbound before Rosa Parks, and then a crash on-ramp partially blocked 24 eastbound from Haywood Lane. In Rutherford County, got a stalled vehicle on the right shoulder, 24 eastbound at Sam Ridley Parkway. Also 24 westbound at Waldron Road in Laverne. In Williamson County, overturned vehicle. It's moved off onto the right shoulder. Still might be a little slow going there at 840 and 65 northbound. And traffic every 10 minutes, every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith. We've got Chris Webber and Ken Weaver in the house on this Good Friday. We're getting a little fired up on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986, and I think we should. This is a conversation we should absolutely have about Mr. Abrego Garcia. Let me reiterate. I have no problem with the Trump administration enforcing the immigration laws. None. I think that is critically important, and it has been a failure of one administration after another for a very long time. So that needs to happen. The concern here is not about enforcing immigration law. It's about due process as we do that. And some of you may not be familiar with how immigration law is enforced. Typically, due process for an immigrant, if somebody's here without legal status, an immigration law judge has a very quick hearing. It's not like we have a full-blown trial to do this. The requirements of constitutional due process for most immigration matters are fairly quick. So we're not even talking about something here that is going to require months and years of legal back and forth. This is simply a very basic ability to challenge a detention, basically. When the government comes, knocks on your door, and says, hey, you have to come with us. Well, why? Well, you're a gang member and you're here illegally. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. And then all of a sudden you're in an El Salvadorian prison. I'm not a sympathetic plaintiff or I should say, Abrego Garcia is not a sympathetic plaintiff. I know the liberal media has tried to paint him out as Father of the Year. That's immaterial. That's irrelevant. What's material here is there is at least a legal dispute over whether he's a gang member or not. Here's why that matters. Because if he is a gang member, then the order of protection that says you can't be deported to El Salvador doesn't apply. So that question matters a lot. One of the questions that y'all ask on the Super Talk text line, it was pointing out some perceived hypocrisy. And I want to be fair to that. I don't want to just kind of see some of these and ignore them. Well, Cameron, I remember a time when, there was a action about one of your foster sons where you felt that the government didn't follow the law and you were really upset about it. Yes, that's true. It was not a judge issuing a legal determination that I was upset with. It was the practice of the detention in the government, and that's the whole point, folks. Conservatives and liberals and everybody should have the ability to challenge these things and say, you know what you're doing is unlawful. Federal government, state government, and you have to stop. And here's another thing. If you don't like the law being what it is, change the law. You can do that. We're in America. If you think that we need to tweak the process, let's change the law. Totally fine. I'm going to read, this is a Reagan appointee and the Fourth Circuit. And this is the opinion. I'm going to just read it. Quote, "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter. But in this case, it's not hard at all. The government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country, note residents, didn't say citizens, in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that's the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims in essence that because it's rid itself of custody, there's nothing that can be done." This is where the administration's saying, hey, it's in the custody of El Salvador. We can't do anything. Everybody knows that's not true, but That's what they're saying. And here's the quote. This should shock not only judges. This should not be shocking not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear. And then the opinion basically says, well, the government's saying Abrego Garcia is a terrorist and a member of MS-13. Perhaps, but perhaps not. That's kind of the whole point, right? We have a hearing. Where do they have those hearings? In court to decide these things. And several of you have raised this point, and I think it's a very, very good point. Well, the Supreme Court said the government must facilitate. And so that is make easier. Okay, that's fair. Here's what the court said about that. The Supreme Court requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and ensure that this case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. Facilitate is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken as the Supreme Court has made perfectly clear. The government's argument that all it must do is, quote, remove any domestic barriers to his return is not well taken in light of the Supreme Court's command that the government facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. So I hear your points, and I think it's very important to recognize what you were saying. 6437 says, check the MS-13 website for member status. Duh. That is certainly an option. I'm not familiar with that website, but point taken. The problem here is, let's put this in a different context that's not quite so politically charged. The government knocks on your door, you, right now, and says, you're a gang member, and that gang has been declared a terrorist organization. We are detaining you and deporting you to El Salvador to CCOT. Well, how would you respond? 2666 says, are you siding with a gangbanger? Just tuned in, so I'm asking. Well, I'm answering. So the government's banged on your door, and it says, you're a gang member, and we're going to detain you and send you to a foreign country. Well, you know that you're not a gang member. So you say, well, officer, I'm clearly not a gang member. He puts you in handcuffs, puts you in an airplane, and you're in El Salvador. Oh, well, that's fine. No, it's not. Of course it's not fine. You'd say, well, I'm not an illegal immigrant. Several of you are saying that right now. Well, he's an illegal immigrant. Okay, cool. I bang on your door, and I say, you're an illegal immigrant and a member of a gang. And I handcuff you. Then I put you in a plane and take you to El Salvador. Huh? Well, you'd say, no, I'm not. I am an American citizen. I can prove it. Where are you going to prove it? I got an idea. How about in court? In court. That's where you prove it. You say, you know what? If the officer doesn't listen to you, and I don't know how many officers have not, pulled you over and you've said, you can't give me a ticket. And they don't listen to you. Several of y'all are saying this, and I want to listen. If an officer just says you're an illegal immigrant, puts handcuffs on you, and you say you're not, and they take you to El Salvador, are you going to be okay with that? No, of course not. You are going to say, I'm an American citizen. You absolutely can't do that. And there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to sue them in court, and you're going to win because you're going to be able to show that you're an American citizen. So the basic thing here of being able to challenge a detention is something that you have to do. That's a safeguard for everybody. It's not about him. It's about you and me and my kids and your kids and the ability to check the government, Take your emotion out of this for a second, folks. If the government can't be challenged on a detention, and several of y'all have made the good point. Well, there was an order of removal. Like he's already had due process, and we've determined that he's eligible for deportation. Facts. That's true. And there's a 2019 order that says you can't send him to El Salvador. Fact. Okay. But he's a member of MS-13. So that's now a terrorist organization. So that order doesn't apply. Cool. Where do we sort that out? This is what the Fourth Circuit says. We sort it out in court. This should be a pretty straightforward hearing. It shouldn't take weeks or days, but it's basically, you just have to go through this. Statman says, and I want to read this, it's not a foreign country. It's his country of origin. He already had 2 trials. He already had a deportation order. So there's a big difference here. We've got a proceeding here that's about immigration. That's not the same as proving an offense beyond a reasonable doubt. You can say all kinds of stuff about somebody. But that, to me, is something that we need to protect, and it's fast. This guy's still going to get deported. It's a matter of where. And this could go fast. And I think this is the problem, is the administration should act, and it has, and the courts check that and say, whoa, you got to allow this guy to challenge his detention. Okay, cool. He does it. And then you move forward. 8653 says you can't drag it out at every level of the court for millions and millions of people. That's a liberal point of view that protects criminals. Due process protects all Americans, not just criminals. And again, this due process is actually faster because this is not a criminal hearing where you have to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. This is an immigration hearing. And what may be quite hilarious is he has a hearing and then he's deported to a third-party country. Maybe he has a hearing and he goes back to El Salvador. Maybe we can act like it's 2025 and do a remote hearing where he has the ability to appear before a judge and make his case and decide it that way. But the idea that we can't decide this, we can't figure this out, is ridiculous. We've got to have due process. That's an American thing. It is not a liberal or conservative thing. It is an American thing. And if you are saying, don't care about due process at all, round them up, ship them out. If that's you, you're going to have a problem with it. I would. If they rounded up my family and said, well, I'm sorry, you're an illegal immigrant and you're a gang member, so we got to do this. Okay. I want to be able to challenge it, and I think you would too. 8653 says they've already figured it out. That's what everybody's telling you. Okay, I hear you. I have no problem with the deportation. There's a way you have to do it as a matter of law. That's all I'm saying. I'm not fighting you on, we probably get to the same place. It's how we get there. And it matters, and the Fourth Circuit agrees with me. And that's a Reagan appointee. And I know some of y'all are like, well, Reagan's the worst. I don't know where conservatives got off on that. But this is a pretty straightforward opinion that looks at the facts and says you got to give people process. It doesn't mean it has to take forever. Jeff says the problem is he's not an American. Well, Jeff, here's the deal. The Constitution, the Supreme Court's held this, that the constitutional protections, like due process, apply to everybody that's here. The argument should be he should never have been here. We should have secure borders, and we should have said no. But once you get here, we have to be able to adjudicate whether what you're saying is true or false. If you're a citizen, we have to be able to adjudicate whether what you're saying is true or false. We have to have those hearings. That's not negotiable. It's not negotiable at all. I see several of y'all waiting, I'm assuming, to yell at me. We should do that. We need to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Hear from the U.S. Senator who traveled to El Salvador to try to win the release of a man the Trump administration says is an MS-13 gang member and will never return to the U.S. This and more at 4:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I guess. Cameron Smith here, filling in for Matt Murphy, who's enjoying this Good Friday. I wanted to get a couple of your calls, and a fair point. I want to be really clear that this is not about the deportation thing. By all accounts, this individual should have already been deported. That's not the issue at all. It's, do you have the ability to challenge your detention? So the truth is, he was not deported. And you can blame the Biden administration. You can go after, and that's fair. Absolutely fair to say, why did you not enforce the law? I'm with you on that. But the truth is, he was out. He was around, detained, and then he can make his claim and say, you can't deport me to El Salvador. Okay, cool. You're still getting deported. And that's reasonable. Again, this is just about due process. I understand it's an annoying legal theory. Carl asked the question, and I think it matters. He said, he broke the law when he came here illegally. Why does he have to have due process? That's what due process is about. That's a good question, but that's what due process is about. When you break the law, if you commit a crime, if you murder someone, and we have the video camera and we've got you dead to rights. We know it's you. We know you shot him. You had the gun in your hand. You're on video. I pretty quickly could just tell you what happened there. But you know what? The government still has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you did that thing. I can't just take you and lock you up. I can't put you in a foreign country. I have to go through the process for a reason. Because if that process isn't there when somebody didn't do the thing or they aren't what the government says they are, this is a very conservative friendly doctrine. It is a check on government power. It's what it is. Because there is no more bigger government solution than incarcerating somebody, detaining them and incarcerating them. That takes away your rights, right? You can't, doesn't matter what rights you have. If I put handcuffs on you and detain you, you don't have any rights. And I understand some of you are saying he's not here legally. He doesn't have any rights. That's not true as a matter of law. It's not. He does. The Supreme Court said as much, that the ability to challenge, and it's not because he's an illegal immigrant, it's because if it happened to you, you would want the ability to challenge your detention. Because we don't want the government to just simply be able to say you're an illegal immigrant, goodbye. Now, those immigration proceedings are very fast, much more efficient than a full trial. You've got your civil proceeding. It's just, okay, you're not here with any status. You can't show us this, so goodbye. And I'm really glad that y'all are asking these questions. If you're not a citizen, how are you entitled to constitutional rights? Because there are certain rights in the Constitution that are preserved for citizens, like, for example, running for president. But a lot of the other rights, the Constitution says persons. It doesn't say citizens. It's basically like, if you're here, this is how it applies. And the Supreme Court has said that and reinforced that. So, again, this isn't about immigrants. It's about you and I. It's about government power. It's about a check on that. That's where conservatives have to say, you know what? As much as I support Trump's ability to enforce immigration law, due process still has to matter too. And the worst thing that happened to the federal government, I'm looking at the court opinion, is that the in-court filings, the federal government admitted they deported this guy in error. Like, they did that as a matter of law. They didn't do that in sort of a press interview, or they did it in a court filing and said he was erroneously sent to El Salvador. We didn't mean to. If you didn't mean to do something, fix it. It's not that complicated. If you meant to, oh, we're going to deport him, we just shouldn't have deported him there, then do that. There's a lot of options here. But those legal questions that are thorny and annoying on this specific issue are really, really important. because all of us would want those rights. And so I get it. I hear you. I'm not objecting to the enforcement of immigration law, but we still have to follow due process. We'll get back to this. I knew we were short time. Danny and Selmer, I see you. You're next. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. And a U.S. senator who visited Kilmar Abrego Garcia in El Salvador yesterday says he's been moved from a notorious prison to another detention center in the country. Senator Chris Van Hollen spoke to reporters at Dulles this afternoon following his return.
He told me, and this was yesterday, that 8 days ago, so I guess 9 days ago from today, he was moved to another detention center in Santa Ana, where the conditions are better. But he said despite the better conditions, he still has no access to any news from the outside world.
The judge overseeing the Brian Kohberger upcoming trial in Idaho has made some key rulings that will impact how the case unfolds. Kohberger, accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students in 2022. Here's Alex Stone.
Dealing with a flurry of arguments before the trial is set to begin this summer, the judge in the University of Idaho murder case says evidence of Brian Kohberger's alleged autism spectrum disorder to explain his demeanor is only allowed at trial if Kohberger testifies. A surviving roommate will be allowed to use the phrase bushy eyebrows to describe the masked intruder that night, and prosecutors, a judge says, can refer to cars seen on the night of the killings that are the same as Kohberger's car. Kohberger's attorneys have tried to get much of the evidence tossed out. Alex Stone, ABC News.
In Rome, large crowds gathering inside the Colosseum for the Way of the Cross procession, marking Good Friday and the crucifixion of Christ Jesus as part of the Easter weekend celebrations. Pope Francis traditionally attends this ceremony, but he has to take a back seat for this year's festivities while he recovers from pneumonia that led to his hospitalization in February. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News. All right shoulder blocked by a crash 24 eastbound past Briley Parkway. In Hermitage, a stalled vehicle on the left shoulder 40 eastbound after Old Hickory Boulevard. Got a crash in the Gore 440 eastbound near I-24. And in Franklin, overturned vehicle still off on the shoulder there 65 northbound after Paytonsville Road, Goose Creek bypass exit 61. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back. Cameron Smith here. Danny has been super patient. Several of y'all have asked this real quick question. Isn't this really just a matter of El Salvador versus somewhere else? Probably. Like, that's why I don't think this is something to get super worked up on. This is checking government power is always a hill that I will die on. The idea that, you know, what's a little bit different is Democrats and liberals are like, this man is an upstanding member of the community. He should not be deported at all. You know, these are silly laws. That's not what I'm saying at all. The difference here between him and a lot of the other people that were deported is he had a specific order in effect that the government did not challenge that said, you can't send this guy to El Salvador. So there's got to be a hearing on whether, in fact, you are a MS-13 gang member and whether that order applies or not. That's it. Due process for folks that are here without status is pretty fast. And so, again, this is like a nothing burger, but it is still something that matters. And when the court's saying, guys, literally you can knock this out and fix this real quick. You don't have, like, they're saying, well, he'll be deported anyway. Fine. Do it. I support that. But this is how it needs to go. Danny, you've been so patient. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm not gonna holler at you, man. I'm just gonna say, or I don't mean I'm not gonna yell at you. I am hollering at you.
Okay.
That means give you a call. But listen, here's the thing on it, and people might not be particularly favorable what I'm gonna say, but I think if we remove the emotion out of it, that
sure,
we all would like to see fair due process for everyone here.
Amen.
And if you give me a minute to just explain.
Okay.
There are laws passed. Most of the people on the side of this due process thing, they pass. I understand the sentiment behind it, but they pass these red flag laws and what do you call it? Restraining order laws.
Yeah. With respect to guns.
Someone just walk into the courthouse and totally perjure themselves just because they're mad at somebody
right.
and say something, and that person can be thrown out of their house. It's usually, okay, I'll give you a little bit of situation. This does happen all too often. Like usually it's a disgruntled, vindictive ex-wife.
Right.
Or one going under being divorced. The man chose for it, and she's not happy. And she'll go in and do a pack of lies in court and have him removed from the house, even though he's law-abiding. Totally
You're talking about having the guns removed from the house.
And personally being removed from the house.
Sure,
it
can be that
can
way.
be removed from the house. Even if already had fairly separated and paying for her to live elsewhere.
Sure.
And establish the address. So there's no due process of law. Now, it normally takes 2 or 3 days till you get reestablished in court, but there's a whole lot of expense and everything, and you're automatically considered guilty.
Sure.
There's no due process of law. And it happened to some people that I know, and one during COVID, that 30 days in a hot summertime with his dog had to exit his house in 10 minutes, relinquish all his firearms and all that to the sheriff and all that. And she came in during that 30 days, stole everything he had.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was court condoned. So it's horrible what can happen. And if or just been a phone call where this guy could come up, show up in court, and there was no proof because nothing had ever happened. And this is the crazy thing. The guy was the abused one. The abuser is the one that wanted out of court because she was a female. So I thought, help this. So until the next court date,
right?
You know, the guy's totally out, loses all his rights, all his everything, premarital home, firearms, everything, and out on the streets. And that's just so unfair. And this is laws that we pass. Now, somebody should. I think that the best way to counteract that would be if there's no recourse for the person. that was wrongfully accused. But I think the best way to counteract that would be if there's stiff penalties in place. If we want these red flag laws and restraining orders and stuff in place, okay, I get it. It's beautiful. We need to make it happen quick. But if somebody falsely does it,
it's a huge problem.
Refuses the court, they need to be thrown in jail as soon as that person gets back. As soon as the next court date, and they can show themselves that they're totally innocent and it was just vindictive action, and they need to be financially compensated for what they've endured.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's all part of due process.
Due process is all it is. Due process. But those are the laws that are actually on the books and stuff in a lot of states that really mess the people up.
Well, I appreciate it, Danny. Thank you for the call. And, that's one of the reasons that I don't support a lot of red flag laws, because the devil's always in the details. It's well-intentioned, but making sure that somebody has the right of appeal, the ability to say, no, this is incorrect. What they're saying is not true. You cannot take my guns, because particularly an ex parte hearing, that means where it's just one party. That's not enough. Like, to separate you from your constitutional rights is a big deal. And I think we should treat it as such. That's all I'm asking. And several of y'all have made this point. If you think 10 to 20 million due processes is a nothing burger, you are a mental midget. That's 3879. Well, how about this? How about it happens every day all over the country, over and over and over again? We have due process all the time. A lot of the immigration stuff can go pretty quick. There's not an issue there. There are not orders of protection. It is simply, you've been detained, you're here without status, you're in violation of the law, we deport you, and then depending on how long you've been here without legal status, you're barred for a certain amount of time from trying to come back into the country. Not only do you have to go to the back of the line, you have to go to the back of the line for years, a decade or more. So, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And I think you guys get it. You understand it. One of the things that the last caller was right about is sometimes you got to take the emotion out of it and say, what would I prefer here? Is this something where I want to have my rights and I want them protected, or I want what I want? The executive branch, regardless of who it is, always wants what they want. That's how they work. The executive branch will always try to get more power for itself. Trump is actually one of the first presidents that said, I'm just going to take a hatchet to my own executive branch. This is a very, very novel thing that hasn't been done for a very long time. And if you look at the polling and you look at where Trump is on these issues, the immigration issue is a winner for him. Big winner. Joe Biden was upside down on immigration. Trump is doing really well because Americans do have a sense that the rule of law matters. And I think that process includes due process. That if we have laws, we need to enforce them. And that's not just a conservative thing. That's not a Republican thing. Democrats, a lot of them, feel the same way. Even if they'd like to see a different immigration law, whatever that law is, it needs to be enforced. I think that Republicans are right to continue to press on these issues and try to enforce the law. But then when the courts check them, adjust, keep moving. That's it. This has taken way too long, way too much of a distraction when you could be doing this over and over again the right way. So just do it the right way. And then we don't have any of these distractions. And then you can focus on reining in government, cutting government, pulling it back. And when we come back, you know what word I haven't said like once? Congress. Congress. I have not said Congress once because it's not clear that they're doing anything. Trump's back and forth with the courts. Two branches are very active here, doing what the Constitution contemplates them doing, and Congress is doing nothing. That's a huge problem, and I'll tell you why when we come back. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Did you know you're overpaying for your health and wellness products? With over 20 company-owned brands offering its members vitamins, supplements, wellness, and skincare products, you're able to save up to 70% off retail.
Members Nutrition can't change your life, but we can change the way you live.
A terrifying encounter with wildlife in East Tennessee, and NASA is going to do a flyby of an asteroid. These stories and more at 5 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith. A couple factual things I want to throw out there. Some of y'all are saying, well, due process for 30 million illegals. The estimates as far as how many people are here illegally in the United States is between 10.9 and 11.4 million. I give you 12 million. It's not a small number, but due process through the immigration courts is absolutely doable. It's not complicated. The challenge that Homan and others are going to face here is, of that number, the Trump administration hasn't even begun to touch that number. And I don't mean that like they're not trying. It's just that folks who come here without status because we haven't enforced the law for so long, create communities, create lives here. Frankly, there's no easy way to say, hey, you're here without legal status. I don't care who you are. Just as a matter of enforcement, it's really challenging. Now, look, if somebody commits a crime, this is the reason that Trump and his administration said that they were going to go after criminal illegal aliens. Why? Because they're detained, right? Once somebody's detained, then you check and say, oh, wait, you're not here with legal status. Then you can go through the process to deport them. For people who are not criminals, who have not violated any other law other than the immigration laws, it's just very, very hard to figure out, okay, who are we talking about here? And you got to be really, really careful. There's actually memos at the DOJ. There have been several actually under the Trump administration talking about permissible ways to enforce immigration laws and impermissible ways. One of the impermissible ways is to say, well, you're Hispanic, and therefore we're going to check your ID. Can't do that. You have to have a reasonable suspicion. You have to have a legally defensible justification. And that's what makes this super challenging for these, call it 12 million folks here without status is, okay, let's just say, for the sake of argument, 1 million had some sort of criminal interaction that you could track, detain, and deport. Okay, cool. But the rest of it is really, really hard. And so it's not that Trump's not trying. It's that's how it works. And that on this issue, again, I've done immigration policy for a very, very long time. When Jeff Sessions was carrying the water for this in the Senate, I was on his judiciary staff. We prevented the Bush amnesty. That was my job. One of my jobs was to say, nope, we're not going to say you broke the law, therefore we're going to forgive that and you get to stay where other people that are doing the right thing, they have to wait in line. And that was part of my job, and I think it was the right policy. It's not okay. Reagan did it. There's always going to be a push to say, this is really difficult, therefore we should just legalize everybody. The chamber class Republicans tend to really like that because they can get cheaper labor. They say, hey, this is a better way to do it. Just easier for us. Most rank and file Republicans don't. They're just, we need to enforce the law if we have it. And again, if you don't like the law, if you don't like our immigration law and you think we shouldn't enforce it this way, change the law. But refusing to enforce it, like Barack Obama, like Joe Biden, like so many others before them, is not the answer. It can't be the answer. Because when it is, then we have lawlessness. The rule of law doesn't matter. My concerns about due process don't matter because at the end of the day, we're not enforcing the laws in the books. So you got to do that. Trump's doing that, and I think it matters. And obviously, you guys do too. We've got to talk about I think Trump and Rubio and others are getting fed up with this negotiation between Russia and Ukraine. That I thought peace was going to be super fast and super easy. We can talk about that. We've got a number of other things. And I wrote a song about you guys. And we got to get to that too. Whatever you want to talk about, 615-737-9986. Let's do it for the next hour. Let's make this Good Friday great. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Five o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. And there was a terrifying encounter with wildlife in East Tennessee last night. Officials say a woman was bitten and then dragged from her home by a black bear in Sevier County. One of the same bears that broke into a vehicle on that property last week. It had been loaded down with groceries, attracting the bears. Well, officials say the adult female bear and 2 yearlings had to be put down last night because relocation is not a viable option when bears get used to people and start attacking them. Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen says Kilmar Abrego Garcia told him he's been moved from the Salvadorian prison CCOT to a detention center with better conditions. Here's Stephen Portnoy.
On arrival at Washington Dulles Airport, Senator Chris Van Hollen said Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been shut off from the outside world.
They haven't told him anything about why he was sent.
Van Hollen says he asked El Salvador's vice president if that country had any reason to imprison him.
Why is he here? Because the Trump administration is paying us to keep him here.
The Maryland Democrat said to create a softer image, Salvadoran officials initially wanted the meeting to take place poolside. He says margaritas were placed in front of them, but that neither he nor Abrego Garcia took the drinks. Stephen Portnoy, ABC News, Washington.
Tennessee Stars published an image of Garcia from a 2022 traffic stop captured by a Tennessee Highway Patrol trooper's body camera. The Star says THP confirmed the 2022 stop last night, including the Tennessee Stars reporting that the Biden-era FBI instructed officers at the scene to release Garcia and his passengers after photographing them and their vehicle. Update now on the mass shooting at Florida State University that killed 2 people and injured 6 yesterday. Dr. Brett Howard, a trauma surgeon at Tallahassee Memorial.
3 of them did go to the operating room and have since been out of the operating room. All 6 of them today are in stable condition, one which is in fair condition given a serious injury. We do feel that all will make a full recovery.
Now, the 2 victims who died have been identified. 45-year-old Tiru Shaba, a husband and father of 2 who was an employee of a campus vendor. The other victim was identified as Robert Morales, formerly an assistant football coach at Leon High School. Officials are working on identifying a motive. The suspected gunman, 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner, who is in custody. He's a stepson of a local sheriff's deputy. And so far, NASA still loves Lucy, the unmanned spacecraft expected to swoop past a second asteroid this weekend. Here's Chuck Severson.
Cranking up its 3 science instruments, the spacecraft on Sunday will observe the harmless asteroid known as Donald Johanson. The flyby will take place 139 million miles from Earth in the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. So far away, it will take 12 minutes for each bit of data to reach flight controllers in Colorado. Lucy's due to reach a bunch of asteroids near Jupiter in 2027.
That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News. All right, got 2 crashes reported on 24 eastbound. The first one off on the right shoulder there at Briley Parkway South, exit 54. And then the other one, 24 eastbound off-ramp to New Salem Highway. This one's going to be in Murfreesboro. In Hermitage, got a stalled vehicle. Police say it's 40 eastbound after Old Hickory Boulevard East. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Weather can change in an instant, and you need to be prepared for any outcome. That's why Generator Supercenter of Nashville will help keep your family safe and connected. We make buying a backup generator simple and easy, with financing options available, free in-home estimate, turnkey installations, no worry warranty, and most importantly, the monitoring and service of your fully installed generator. Come see us at our location in Nashville or visit us online. Generator Supercenter of Nashville. We serve all Middle Tennessee.
Welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt on this Good Friday. A couple of things that I wanted to clarify on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. Aren't they criminals if they violate U.S. immigration law? Maybe. And the reason I say that like that is because immigration law, like the body of law that we're talking about, encompasses both civil and criminal violations. For example, unauthorized entry and overstay, like overstaying your visa, are typically civil. But failure to depart and, for example, failing to update your address where you live can lead to criminal penalties. So what ends up happening is folks say, particularly liberals, they say, well, it's just civil. Well, not all the time. And then conservatives and hardliners on immigration say, no, it's criminal. The truth is it's kind of both, depending on what's going on there. And depending on what your infraction is, there's 5 and 10-year bars to readmission. And basically that means if we deport you and then you want to come back in, no matter if you follow the proper process, you're still barred from coming in. Like, they'll just say, no, you overstayed. You were here more than a year. Therefore, I think at that point, it's a 10-year. So, bye. The other thing said, well, this is really difficult for for immigration officers. The Tennessee General Assembly and the governor just named our state immigration officer. So immigration enforcement is something we should do. If we have laws, we should enforce them. If we don't, we should repeal them. That's how laws should work. The big issue with enforcement is you can't just go down the road and say, you look like you might be an illegal immigrant. Show me your papers. Can't do that. Like, there's DOJ guidance on that says, nope. So typically we're looking at, you've gotten picked up on some other offense. It could be a traffic violation. It could be a criminal offense, or a more severe criminal offense. And they could then look at your legal status and say, you're not legal, so we're going to prosecute you, and we're going to ultimately deport you. But to just look around and say, oh, you might be not with authorization, that doesn't fly. So one of the reasons why E-Verify and some of these other things matter, and people came up with them, was, well, if you kill the jobs magnet, if everybody who works in the United States, we have to verify your citizenship or your work authorization. We do have work visas and stuff like that. If you don't have status, you can't work here. If you you can't work here, you can't make any money. If you can't make any money, the desire to be here wanes precipitously, or at least the desire to be here and not go through the process. So that's kind of, that I do think is maybe the better way to do this, is say, here's the deal. When you sign up for employment, when somebody hires you, they've got a check. Now, the flip side of this, the business community is like, why is it our job to enforce immigration law? And the answer is that it shouldn't be. So that's the sort of weight here of, okay, how much of a burden is this on businesses? Do they want to do that? How much of a penalty are you going to put on them? Because they're like, look, we're just trying to do a job. We're trying to manufacture something. We're trying to build something. We're trying to provide a service. These are the people that showed up. You know, we're not trying to cheat anybody. We're paying our taxes. We're doing the stuff we're supposed to do. But you're now going to put criminal penalties on us if we don't do the thing the government should do. And this all goes back to secure the borders. Make sure that people don't come here illegally. And the more pressure you can put on that, less of a problem you have on the back end. Steven's on the road. He wants to talk about immigration law. Hey, Steven, what's up?
Cameron, how's it going, man?
Rocking and rolling.
Yeah, good Friday, man. Happy Friday to you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I want to kind of bring it all together since it's, my Lord and Savior's crucifixion date here, and we celebrate that.
Sure.
Also, looking at the fact that all these issues surrounding illegal aliens coming from all over the world and just coming into our country.
Sure.
And now we're in the process with this guy and many others of, having to go through courts, which you know a lot about.
Yeah.
Having to get lawyers and go before judges and this, that, and the other.
Yep.
And, the Constitution is written law, just like, God has a written law as well.
Sure.
And I say just like God, man, nobody's going to enter into the kingdom unless they have followed the laws, but everybody will be judged. So when I think about the worst person that I could think of in the history in modern day, for what I know, I would probably say Hitler would be up there, if not the worst, one of the top three. There's probably worse or just as worse.
Who would be your other two? I'm actually curious. Hitler, I get, but who would be like up there?
It's like some high-end cartel boss or something like that, and then some just complete evil, murderous, demonic, satanic cult leader kind of, know.
I would think they would be up there with Hitler, probably. Fair. Continue.
So then you got to say, okay, well, I don't think those people are going to get in because they're going to be judged on what they did in this life, right? Well, so in a sense, heaven has walls, heaven has laws, and heaven has, courts and judges as well.
And streets of gold.
And just like
it's cool.
Most of every country in this world has the same.
Yeah.
So it's really not, I know this whole system, like what there's a lot of breaking it down in details to everything, but it really should be simple in the end. Nobody should just be allowed to come into our country, even if they just want to work. I mean, there's a process for that, and they have to abide by the laws. And no matter what this guy is claiming, he didn't just come across the border from Mexico. He came from a country below Mexico. So he took a journey just like thousands of others, millions of others, to come into our country illegally, which is breaking a law there in itself. So I think he needs to stay where he's at. I don't think the guy's going to come back. That's just my thoughts personally.
Here's a question. Why can't we do a Zoom hearing? Why can't we do it that way?
Yeah, I don't know much about all that, but I know what a Zoom call is. And, as far as, I guess, I don't know how that would even work. What, the judges here and then...
Yeah, it's just a remote hearing.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I'm for that. Can you make that happen? Can somebody make that happen so we can...
Well, you know what Zoom is, and so it's not actually that complicated. Like, we all know what this is. This can happen. Yeah. And this is where those of you guys who are doing the whole, facilitated. Well, the Trump administration has to facilitate, and that doesn't mean they have to do. Well, I mean, if it's like setting up a Zoom call, like that's pretty basic.
And it saves money.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to transport anybody. I mean, he can just put him in a room and put him on the camera and put a screen up there and then have the whole thing go down that way. I mean, either way, he still has to go before a judge and he still has to abide by the laws. And that's why I think in the end, it don't matter what anybody says on whatever level of our court, of our justice system, the law is written and this guy's not coming back.
Yeah, well, you know what Alan said about the streets of heaven? Do you know what he said? He said they're guarded by United States Marines. So, is what Alan
I believe that, man. My stepdad is he's not an ex-Marine. He's a former Marine, and yeah.
Well, I thought they were called devil dogs, so, I mean, you got to.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Only certain platoons.
Okay.
Mine was a first battalion, 6th Marine during last parts of Vietnam. So, but he served with his brothers and sisters, man, and made that sacrifice just like Jesus, man.
Well,
I'll make a sacrifice somehow.
Well, I appreciate that, and I mean, thank all our Marines for their service, and thank you for your call.
Yep. You
Appreciate
too, man.
it.
Have a good one.
You too. Yeah, guys. I mean, this stuff isn't that complicated, and I get it. This is politics in 2025, so we got to punch everybody in the face. We got to get upset about everything. I mean, not really. I mean, we don't. We could also just kind of chill and do the thing and then move forward. But I mean, we could punch too. I mean, that's reasonable. Mo, we're kind of on short time, but I want to hear what you have to say. What you got, Mo?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the complexity of our history is that, America, as we know it today, kind of got founded off of people not really having any type of laws. Like, I mean, how everyone kind of came over here and all of a sudden we're just cold turkey. We're going to say, hey, create these rules and this is how everybody's going to come in. So when you think about who the first so-called illegal immigrant was, it's just kind of like.
Are you suggesting we're a nation of immigrants?
Go figure, right? But
I know, crazy, right?
Right. But the laws only apply to some more than others.
Well, that's the problem I have with government. It's government. It's rules for thee and not for me. I've always been suspicious of that. And I think you make a good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I appreciate the call. Thanks, Mo.
All right. Yep.
So, I mean, yeah, I have a huge problem with that. You'll have to forgive me. Several of y'all brought up the Patriot Act. I am not trusting of government. That doesn't mean we don't need government. I'm not an anarchist. The Constitution, which I support, I know that y'all are going to laugh at this, constitutes a government. And so I'm okay that we have government. There are some really good benefits of a government. You can, look at Hobbes and the Leviathan. The state of nature is nasty, brutish, short, and cruel. I don't really want to live in that. But y'all you just have to forgive me on the question of whether or not I just trust the government to do the right thing, because I don't. I don't think most of you guys do either. You can like Trump all you want, but that's literally the most dangerous scenario. You have a politician you like that's running the government, so now you start to trust the government. Come on, folks. That's a terrible idea. I have worked in Congress. I've worked in the House. I've worked in the Senate. I've seen this. To a man and woman, every one of my friends who has worked in the federal government will say, putting your faith in this, it's something we do, but the idea that you're really putting all your chips on the government to get it right is dumb. It will not work out for you. In fact, I'm filing a piece today to that end. I looked at Thomas Friedman's piece in the New York Times about he's never been more afraid for America. And I said, I'm never more optimistic, because maybe some Democrats and some Republicans will say this is kind of weird. This whiplash between asleep at the wheel with Joe Biden to swerving across 7 lanes with Donald Trump. Maybe we should have something a little more stable. maybe we shouldn't have a supercharged executive branch that can do whatever it wants while Congress just sits there on its butt, doesn't do anything. They declare things. They go take trips to El Salvador so cameras can follow them. They don't do anything. So, I mean, that's just a novel conservative theory that maybe we should not trust the government and put our hope in the government or any politician for that matter. That's just me. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Nashville property values skyrocket. Details coming up at 5:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Skyrocket, you say?
Skyrocket.
That sounds exciting. I like some of that skyrocketing, though I can't leave because my wife said so. She said, you may not go live in the woods by yourself. We have 5 boys in the house, and that is not okay.
Yeah, you're not going to leave her alone with those 5 beasts.
No, the beast.
Those 4 beasts.
She has assigned me to the garage where we move heavy things. And thank you to those of you who donated large industrial tires to the cause. I have 3 of them now for the 5 boys, and they now race them.
All right.
They race tire flips,
yes,
which is a sight to behold. And they don't always not fall over them. But, again, very, very entertaining. I want to read from Alan. He said, forgive me, with suspicious spelling. I think Alan might be drinking over in Hartsville maybe a little bit on this Good Friday. All my chores are done. My wife is at work, and I have nothing else I have to do but feed my dog, have some beers, and be a smart A-word. And I respect that, Alan. I respect that very much.
Sounds like a real Good Friday.
I am here for that. I can work with all day long. Alexis in Murfreesboro has been patient and waiting, and so I want to get to Alexis. Alexis, tell me how it is.
Hi. I usually don't listen at this time of day, but I turned on the radio and I heard a comment. Caller called in about how we are a nation of immigrants, and I am just so sick of that rhetoric. I mean, that is spewing that tells me right there that you went to public school, because that is spewing some government education nonsense out.
So what are we? Tell me.
We are not a nation of immigrants. My heritage and my people came here and they settled the country. They did not immigrate to another country that was already established. They did not suck off the teats of government welfare. No, they settled some rigorous terrain and they navigated on very difficult and dangerous terms to settle America. And I just think it's dishonoring to my people and my heritage that
they didn't give the Native Americans smallpox blankets, did they?
I'm sorry, I did not hear that. What was that?
They didn't give the Native Americans smallpox blankets or anything. It wasn't those people.
No.
Oh, okay.
My gosh,
good.
no.
Just making sure. Be super awkward.
No. I mean, it's just spewing. I mean, literally just public school nonsense back out. No, my people deserve a little bit more honor and respect than that. They are not immigrants. They didn't come to an established country. No, they came and they settled their own land and they founded their own laws.
But where do they come from? That's my question. Where do they come from?
They're Anglo-Saxons, they're Europeans, but where did they come to? There was no established country. There was no government already founded. No, they settled here their own government. They were not immigrants. They didn't come here to welfare systems that could to give them payouts. You know, I mean,
whoa! I got a question. Here's a question. But immigration basically means to come from one place into another place. It's not like a super technical definition. So that no,
it's from one country to another country, and there was no country here that was settled with its own government.
Okay, so saying we're a nation of immigrants, like the thing that, you know, the Statue of Liberty holds, send me your huddled masses yearning to be free, like that kind of thing. Like, no, not. Like we don't.
No, what does the Statue of Liberty have to do with the Statue of Liberty? Wasn't put there till hundreds of years later after my people came here.
Right, but like it's not just are we a nation that welcomes immigrants at our founding, but like at other times too, right? Like other folks on the super text line have pointed out, like we welcome immigrants. We don't welcome illegal immigrants, but they're very pro-immigrant. What I'm hearing you say is, nah, I'm good. Or am I hearing that wrong?
No, that's not what I said. I said it's disrespectful and dishonoring to call my heritage a nation of immigrants. No, they weren't immigrants. They settled their own country. Give them some respect. I mean, these people walked through very difficult challenges to establish our own government and our own
They pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. Like, that was a big deal.
Today's immigrants come here, and there is a set of privileges they get. There are handouts. I mean, they didn't have that when they first settled America. They didn't. We are not a nation of immigrants. Now we can argue all day if we should have immigration, yes, I think there are certain terms that there should be immigration, legal immigration to the United States. But that doesn't discount the fact that our settlers were not immigrants; they were settlers.
What would those terms be? Like, what do you think our immigration policy should be? Like quotas from different countries? Where should people come from? Like, what do you think?
I think it should be based on merit. I think that there are. I think that there should be legal immigration allowed into the United States, and I do think it should be based on merit. I think we should have a certain percentage of people that are truly refugees from another country.
Okay.
But listen, I grew up in Southern California, and I know that is not the majority of
so you're a refugee
of people
too.
that are here that have immigrated here. I'm sorry?
You're a refugee. You have immigrated from California to Tennessee.
No. I'm not a refugee.
Okay, just checking.
I live in the United States of America just like you have. I did 11 years in the United States Marine Corps, and then my husband, we moved back to his hometown.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a refugee.
Oh, you didn't flee California. I just wanted to make sure.
No, I didn't flee California. I did 11 years in the Marine Corps, and I married someone out of Murfreesboro.
That's fair. That's fair. There are a lot of folks who have, in fact, fled California for the volunteer state. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Alexis. I appreciate the call. And sure, that's a take. I mean, the Super Talk text line 3893. My wife is an immigrant, and she's wondering where she can get some of those handouts. That's fair. That's fair. All right, we got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. And right now in Middle Tennessee, Nashville property values skyrocket. Reappraisals going out this weekend show the median increase 45% since the last one in 2021. The biggest increases are in Bellevue, Belmead, Old Hickory, Southeast Nashville, but the biggest of all is in Forest Hills. Maryland Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen has returned from El Salvador, where he met last night with the man deported after his arrest in Maryland last month. Van Hollen says despite what the president of El Salvador has claimed on social media, neither he nor Kilmar Abrego Garcia touched the margaritas that were placed in front of them during their meeting at Van Hollen's hotel. Here's Stephen Portnoy.
The Maryland Democrat says El Salvador's vice president told him his country has no proof that Kilmar Abrego Garcia has committed any crimes. Chris Van Hollen says after weeks at the notorious Seacott prison, Abrego Garcia has been moved to a different facility where conditions are said to be better. Van Hollen says officials arranged the meeting because his news conferences were airing on local TV.
They were feeling the pressure.
Van Hollen says authorities wanted his meeting with Abrego Garcia to take place poolside.
They want to create this appearance that life was just lovely.
Stephen Portnoy, ABC News, Washington.
In the Sean Diddy Combs trial, Combs' team losing a bid to delay the proceedings. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Going to start with jury selection May 5th. The judge denied a request from Sean Combs' legal team for a 2-month adjournment to try and resolve some evidentiary disputes. The judge said there was no reason that he saw that there needed to be that kind of a delay. Still plenty of time to prepare for trial.
That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News. All right, Madison got a crash reported, right lane blocked, Briley Parkway westbound before Gallatin Pike. And in Murfreesboro, we've got the off-ramp partially blocked, 24 eastbound to New Salem Highway. That's a crash there. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith. Matt's out on break, so you get me. I apologize. Super Talk text line 615-737-9986. 1972 said, as someone with Cherokee Indian blood, my ancestors learned you better be careful who you let in. Facts. And so whether we are a nation of immigrant or not, as some seem to contest, the Native Americans learned pretty quick. Hey, this could go south fast. And unfortunately, that's the nature of the world, right? Things change. It's not always pretty. And we should acknowledge that. A lot of things that happened at the beginning of our country, we didn't treat people very well. And there were some original sins. But that doesn't mean we're a horrible nation. What we do today really matters. But there's nothing wrong with being honest about what previously happened. And I do respect our founding fathers. They were not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and there's nothing wrong saying that. Luke in Shelbyville has some thoughts on immigration. What you got, Luke?
Hey, Cameron, how's it going, buddy?
Rocking and rolling.
Man, happy Friday. Good Friday to you, and I hope you have a blessed Easter.
Back at you.
Thank you, sir. So, somebody, I can't remember who said it, talking about why is that got to be my responsibility to support immigration? That's because you're a United States citizen. It's every one of us' jobs to support immigration and take care of each other. Head on a swivel. If something ain't right,
sure,
tell somebody about it.
See something, say something.
Exactly. And that young lady, young Marine, female Marine, just called in, bless her heart. That's a prime example of how things have gone a different route in the military.
What do you mean?
Put it this way, 2009, I worked for a company, and we supported the Marine Expeditionary Unit. I was a civilian contractor.
Okay.
We were teaching a belt-fed machine gun course. It was a 2-year contract out at Camp Lejeune. And one is a week-long course, and on the last day, we have a familiarization shoot throughout the weapon systems. And we had a full bird colonel that was retiring in that course. He spent 35 years in the Marine Corps. This was 2010. And got to befriend him. Just down-to-earth, great dude. He was enlisted in Vietnam, did 2 tours.
Sure.
Came back home, got commissioned, went to college, got commissioned, came back. Anyways, long story short, I had a Lance Corporal come up to me on my belt fed, and I asked him if he understood the weapon system. He said, yes, he did. I told him to get down, clear it out, and stand by. He did so. He did it perfect. And I was like, heck yeah. I gave him his ammunition, showed him his targets. He understood those, and I told him to engage. Well, on a 240 belt-fed machine gun, we have a phrase that I was in the Army, so we speak a little different than Marines do. But we have a saying so we get the proper amount of rounds off in each sequence of fire, so each burst, each trigger press.
Sure.
So 6 to 9 round bursts. I'm not going to say what we would say because it puts you in a different mindset. But this young Marine was saying this phrase, but he wasn't saying it correctly. He was the point of the phrase was to get you ready to be able to do your job, and with the mass casualty producing machine gun.
Sure.
So
where are we going, Luke? I need you to land the plane for me.
Quick. All right, cool. I just keep your head on a swivel. I just want to say I bless Marine Corps, but things have gone a whole lot different from what they used to be when I was in. And I just pray for everybody. And but that the colonel told me he was getting out because his Marine Corps had gone corporate. It was not his Marine Corps anymore. And that's why he was getting out. He said he'd do 100 years if he could, but he couldn't take it no more. He said he was lying every day, saying one thing to the women during in one day, and then saying something totally different to the men. And he said he couldn't do it anymore. And I applaud him.
Well, I
That's all I
appreciate
got to say about that.
Appreciate it, Luke. Thank you for the call. Things change, over time. Okay. Lindsay was getting on me. She said, she had asked me earlier, why are we having these discussions about whether illegal kids need to pay extra for education, for translators and whatnot? Are they not being deported after due process with their families? Well, it kind of depends, is the answer. If the family is removed, then the kids are removed too. But that's an interesting question, and frankly, I don't know the answer, is if a kid shows up for school and registers with an address or anything like that, does the school have the capacity to ask about citizenship status? And, I don't know the answer to that. I wish I did, but it would seem to me that what they really care about from the school's immediate standpoint is, are you zoned for the school? Are you in the service area, if you will? I don't think. As far as our school papers and stuff, I'm trying to think if there was ever a request for citizenship, and I don't think there is. Again, if you don't like businesses being the enforcers of immigration law, man, you want to talk about things getting wild, is schools trying to enforce it and trying to do it that way. And you also have the situation where you have citizen kids and parents without status. That is absolutely accurate. So this is a can of worms, and it will be for some time. This is not Trump's going to come in and deport everybody and then it'll be done. This is going to take a long time. And the way that you deal with this is, and a couple of you asked this, so I'll address this too. The Biden administration was still deporting people. Don't think for a minute that the Biden administration wasn't deporting anybody. Like, you can see the numbers. Now, they were letting a lot of folks cross the border, but they were also deporting a lot of folks. That's true. Like, you can just look at the numbers. They're there. So y'all have pointed out that I called it 12 million number has been kind of static for a while. And I think that's part of why is, yes, there are people coming over. There's people who are leaving. There's people who are self-deporting. So there are changing dynamics to that figure all along, but that's kind of where it's hung up. And it's gotten a little bit bigger over the years, but that's been pretty static. I don't really know why, but that's that isn't crazy. 0249 says, when I registered my kids for school, there was a question on the registration form asking if the student was a U.S. citizen. I don't know. If it was asked, I missed it. But again, we have entities that are responsible for enforcing immigration law, turning schools into an immigration enforcement mechanism. I just think that you get a lot of blowback there. And again, there are a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are many families where you have a citizen child who is eligible for public education, and then you have parents who are there without status. Like, okay, so then what? Can you try to leverage the kid to get to the parents? I mean, now we're talking about it. And Alan makes a good point. A lot of this will depend on what SCOTUS decides with respect to birthright citizenship challenges. I think birthright citizenship will likely continue. It's a very simple, clean rule. You're born here, you're a citizen. It is not the law of every country. It's not the case that the way we do it is the way everybody does it. There are a lot of countries that do it very differently. And so, we should keep that in mind, but maybe the Supreme Court will upend that, but I don't know. 3989 says, is there not a responsibility on the company and the school to ask for proper identification? Yes, but there's a lot of different ways to provide identification. And if you say, how far do they have to go? Do they have to, if they ask for an ID and somebody puts forth an ID, is that it? Do they have to peruse it and determine whether it's a valid ID or whether it's a counterfeit? Do we say everybody has to have an ID to work? Because you do have to provide, what's it, the I-9. I mean, there are forms, but, there's a lot of folks that are looking for day laborers who can just help them out for a project or a shift. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the way that we should do it, but just keep in mind that each one of these government things is a mandate. It may not be a bad one, but it is a mandate. It's something that businesses and in schools or whoever has to deal with, and then they got to figure it out. Sherry says, no, Cameron, it's not that simple. If you're born here, you're a citizen. Because originally that had to do more with the Japanese and slaves. It didn't have to do with illegal immigrants coming over here pregnant and giving birth. I'm just saying, for all of my lifetime, if you're born here, you're a citizen. And I can't imagine in any world that if that changed, that folks who had that would somehow have that taken away from them, because that is absolutely not the expectation of people who were born here. I'm not going to jump through any other hoops to prove I'm a citizen. I was born here. Deal with it. All right. We got to take a break. We're going to play the song I wrote for you when we come back, and then we'll have fun for the last hour. This is the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
People in Davidson County have started getting their property reappraisals. We'll tell you about that more at 6 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Well, actually, your property is worth $1 million bajillion. So says the mayor of Nashville. And therefore, you have taxes you owe, guys. I'm sorry. It's just taxes are the price you pay for the nice things. That's the argument. Have fun with that. As somebody who, I thought about it with the tax deadline in Tennessee being shifted to November 3rd. I was thinking, oh, well, maybe not. I might wait and pay. But then I realized then I'm going to have to pay again in a few months from then, and that would be terrible. So I went ahead and gave the government their pound of flesh, and it made me very unhappy.
Yeah.
I hate taxes. I hate them. I very much wish I could direct my taxes in the federal government and just say, here's how much I have to pay you. But I really like the Department of Defense. Give it to them. I don't want to pay for all this other stuff. And when you really start looking at the Doge stuff and you look at all the stuff they're cutting and you realize that nobody has really done this in forever, you realize how much they're just setting it on fire. And that's even more infuriating. The idea that you've so set all of the money I gave you on fire already and then borrowed it and set that on fire that it's not like you're saying, hey, we appreciate you for supporting the federal government. It's more like we don't care about you or your family or anything else. We want your money, and then we'll spend it, and then spend your kids' money too. Thank you for playing. And every time, and this is why I am a dork, and I fill out the free fillable forms. My taxes have gotten more complicated over the years. The pain has increased. And you know what? I do it anyway because I want to feel it. I want it to hurt. Because then I can remember I'm a conservative and want to limit the reach of the federal government. I want to take a hatchet to it and really reduce the spending. And it's not because I'm cold-hearted. It is not because I don't want to do good things for people or help them. I think we should, and it makes us a tighter nation, a better people when we take care of one another. But the forced mandatory government laundered helping is where I have a big problem because it's an inefficient way of doing these things. And if the argument is Americans will never do the right thing, they'll never take care of each other, they'll never take care of the poor, they'll never. That's one, not true. And two, if it is, we have a character problem, not a government problem. Big deal. And I'm just so tired of looking at all the examples of, well, we paid this contract to study all the silliness. You know what? Colossal Biosciences brought back dire wolves. They're going to bring back woolly mammoths. I would like to see a pack or a pride or whatever you call a bunch of woolly mammoths. We haven't had to deal with that in a while, but it's coming. And you know how much government funding they took? None. So the private sector can do awesome things efficiently if you let it. The government doesn't do anything efficiently. So you got choices here, folks. Pay your taxes to the Leviathan that's just going to spend it, burn it, and then tell you about its feelings. Or invest in awesome companies, maybe get dinosaurs again. Just saying. I love dinosaurs. We have 1 hour to go, and I'm going to play that song. It's amazing. Ray, Jason, Larry, if you're listening, you should keep listening and come back on the other side of the hour. This is the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith, and this is Super Talk 99.7.
Six o'clock from on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Right now in Tennessee, people in Davidson County have started getting their property reappraisals. Countywide, the median value increase is 45%. Here's Channel 4's Marius Payton.
The areas that saw the biggest increase were in Bellevue, Belmead, Old Hickory, and parts of southeast Nashville. The biggest increase was in the Forest Hills area. Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell says the rate will come down from what it's currently at. However, not everyone will benefit.
We expect across the board we should be able to set a historically low property tax rate, but also that an increase in property values will mean that some Nashvillians pay more in property taxes as a result.
Now, you can appeal the change of value in your property. They put the number to call on the notice letters. Now, there's a deadline to request a review, though. That's going to be May 9th, and you're going to hear about the findings of your review by June.
Well, bad news on this Good Friday for hundreds of families in Middle Tennessee. Saks Global, Tennessee Fulfillment Center in Laverne, is going to start laying people off in June. A total of 446 workers will have been laid off by the time it stops in November. And the Sean Diddy Combs trial, Combs team losing a bid to delay proceedings. Here's ABC senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky with more.
Several of the alleged victims were allowed to testify under pseudonyms, not Cassie Ventura. She'll testify under her own name, but other alleged victims of Sean Combs's. And the judge is still waiting to rule on whether the video depicting Combs and Cassie in the Intercontinental Hotel from March of 2016, whether that can come in.
And in Rome, crowds gathering inside the Colosseum for the Way of the Cross procession, marking Good Friday and the crucifixion of Christ Jesus as part of the Easter weekend celebrations. Pope Francis traditionally attends this ceremony, but has to take a back seat for this year's festivities while he recovers from pneumonia that led to his hospitalization back in February. And excited kids looking skyward and grabbing for sweet, fluffy treats that are their keys to prizes in an annual event in Michigan. Here's Chuck Sievertson.
Matt Mason brought his daughter, Georgia.
Probably the most exciting part was seeing the helicopters. But once we saw the marshmallows drop, we got really excited.
Parents and kids in Warden Park, Royal Oak, Michigan Friday. And Melissa Nowrocki, Oakland County Recreation Chief.
The Great Marshmallow Drop has been going on for over 30 years.
Children grab as many fallen marshmallows as they can to exchange for a prize bag with water park tickets and a color your own kite.
Say thank you for the marshmallows.
You're welcome.
That's the latest news, traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News. Madison, a crash blocking the right shoulder, Briley Parkway westbound before Gallatin Pike. And in Murfreesboro, we've got a crash. Off-ramp partially blocked 24 eastbound to New Salem Highway. Back here in Nashville over by the airport, TDOT reporting a crash blocking the right lane, 40 eastbound before Briley Parkway, and an accident, right lane blocked, 40 eastbound at Jefferson Street. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back. The final hour. Wasn't it Europe, the final countdown?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's where we are. It's the final hour, and so we should make it weird and have fun with it. 615-737-9986. Call in, text in. Several of y'all have pointed out that it's 2025, and we can't even own raccoons. The Trash Panda Act would fix that. We'll probably have to wait till next legislative session. But by then, maybe we have dinosaurs. And yes, I would like to own one. Maybe several. But they have to be bigger than the lizards that I can already own. I have a bearded dragon. His name is Maximus Decimus Meridius.
Wow.
He's a pretty serious lizard. He just kind of, he's like a pet rock, really. He hangs on my shoulder when I do things. He likes to mow the lawn with me.
Really?
Yeah. It'd be super awkward if he fell off and I mowed him. But he doesn't care. He just is chill. He gets a little paranoid outside because their predator species is like hawks in Australia.
Yeah.
And they will, so they're looking up.
Yeah, we got plenty of them around here,
And
too.
so we garden together. He's a good lizard. But a dinosaur's got to be bigger. I've watched Jurassic Park, so I know that the compies, the Compassaurus or whatever they are, the ones that kill Dennis Nedry, they look cute, but a bunch of them will eat you. So there are some drawbacks. But again, the dire wolves look cool. I'm down with that. They made a woolly mouse, also cool. Now they're onto the mammoth. A lot bigger than a mouse. And there was a robust discussion from, I guess, biological ethicists as to whether you could create one woolly mammoth or you needed to create a bunch of woolly mammoths because they roamed in herds. I'm just going to call it a herd. I don't know what a collective of these are, but they would be lonely. So if you brought one back and it was the only mammoth in the world, it would be sad. And I thought that was an excellent conversation for people to have in America in 2025. Would the woolly mammoth that we bring back be sad if it was by itself? And the answer is probably. I'll tell you who's not going to be sad. You guys. So Matt graciously lets me fill in for him from time to time. And I fill in for some of the other guys too, depending on, what the schedule looks like. But I'm here every Wednesday on Matt's show, and I've developed over the years a rapport with you guys. And as you know, the story of Wasted Bacon and that we're developing the songs for Wasted Bacon, it's a lot. But those of you who are regulars know about this enterprise. And so I've really had a lot of fun with it. And before I published all these songs, I said, it feels incomplete. We're missing something. And so in honor of the callers to this show, I wrote a song for you, for the listeners, called Voices on the Line. And Chris is going to play it right now.
Ray calls the station. He's a purist, loud and proud. His words are sharp, he's standing tall in the crowd. Rhetoric soaring through his latest post. He tells me I'm softer in the head than most.
Mushy brain.
Oh, the voices on the line, they shout and they roar. From the heartland to the mountains, they want more.
Want more.
They call me every name under the sun.
Rhino.
But they love this country, their God and their guns.
America.
Larry talks his right, says they'll never take them away.
There you go, Larry.
He's got a farm and a tractor where the flag always sways. The man laughs at my takes and gets the last word, then sends me a picture of my favorite blackbird.
SR 71, baby.
Voices on the line, they shout and they roar. From the heartland to the mountains, they want more. They call me every name under the sun, but they love this country, their God and their gun.
Jason, you better listen.
Jason's on the line. He's tough, but he's fair. Also posts a lot of stuff I can't say on the air.
Can't say it.
He's always listening, says what he thinks. But if I needed a friend, he'd buy the first round of drinks.
He would.
Oh, the voices on the line, they shout and they roar. From the heartland to the mountains, they want more. They call me every name under the sun, but they love this country, their God and their guns. Their God and their guns.
Well, there you go, folks. I mean, has anybody else ever written a song about the listeners to a radio show? I don't think so.
Are you not entertained now?
You should be quite entertained.
Yeah.
And you know what? I appreciate you clinging to your gods and your gun, well, God and your guns, because that's America. So thank you. And I want you guys to sincerely know that. Every radio host on this station, even, Des, those of us who are filling in, you know what? We care about you. You guys make it interesting. Like the back and the forth, every time Ray tells me I'm Cameron Romney, it's all right because it's a human interaction. It's something that our world needs way more of, not way less. And y'all make it happen. I see you 1733 on the Super Talk text line, SR71 woot woot. Yeah, that's right. Ray and I have been talking about the SR71 for the last several days. And Ray pointed out that it has no theoretical max speed. Eventually it would disintegrate, but the faster it goes, the faster it can go. And he said, look it up. If you are I'm in my early 40s, and this was the plane of my childhood. This was, I remember, I think it was MiGs, Russian MiGs, this is a really famous spy plane, and they launched missiles at this spy plane, and it outran the missiles.
That's pretty cool.
Forget missile lock. You can't catch me. Boom. The SR-71 was so fast that it could not turn around at top speed within the state of Texas. Think about that. At some of its top recorded speeds, 1.6 miles per second. Per second. I mean, and that is so cool.
boogieing.
It is not science fiction. So, I appreciate y'all humoring me on all of that, but we are close to the Wasted Bacon album coming out. I'm going to tell you, we have a great song called Run the Damn Ball. I think I can say that. Don't know. There's also one called The Wind Beneath My Sheets. I'll leave a little mystery there. And thank you. Dave said he's an A10 Warthog guy. I get that. That's fair. Like, I like the Warthog too. Nothing wrong about that. But I got to see in Georgia, it was in a museum, but I got to see an SR-71 in person. And
Warner Robins, I take it?
Yep.
Yeah, been there, yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. Like the diamond pattern in the afterburners. Like, I remember those pictures from when I was a kid. And I got another A10 Warthog with a Burt. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Not going to lie. That Warthog, it's not going to catch that blackbird. Nobody's going to catch that blackbird. Nobody since has caught that blackbird. That's how cool that was. I hope somebody out there has a young man or young woman that is an excellent math student that wants to be an exceptional engineer that's going to come up with really cool machines. And I appreciate the compliments on the song. That's so cool. It's such a weird environment we're in right now. So for those of y'all who don't know the story, Matt and I went to a Men of Valor breakfast. There was a lot of leftover bacon. He said, well, that's a good band name. And then I said, well, okay, cool. I think I'm going to make a band. And then I just like Googled some stuff, and there was an AI thing. And it would let you, if you paid money, you could like write the lyrics and stuff. And I can't really sing that well. My kids can play instruments. I can't. And that's what we came up with was we're going to make this band, and I'm going to make a bunch of songs. And I've been doing it over the last couple of weeks, having so much fun doing it, and then put them where you guys can stream them, take the proceeds, donate to charity, that kind of fun stuff. And some of these songs they're freaking hilarious. I'll give you some of the titles so that you can get excited about it. I have a couple others that I thought I just wrote for some of my family members that were funny and some serious, but the more humorous ones are Voices on the Line, which you just heard, The Wind Beneath Our Sheets, Render the Fat, because we have a lot of heavy bacon theme here, Thick Cut, Meat Candy, Wasted Bacon, which is the Origin song, Don't Tariff Me. It's very exciting for those of you who like music and not tariffs. He and She, about pronouns. Mr. Tickle's Last Laugh. It's a song about... Ooh. Mr. Tickle's Last Laugh is a song about my sister's evil cat growing up. Mr. Tickles hated me, and the feeling was mutual, and we went at it. I mean, he would throw a hairball on my bed. I would put tape, sticky side up, right inside my door, so that when that awful cat would come to hairball me, he would get his fluffy paws stuck in the tape, and he would just spaz out. And it was hilarious. But at the end, it was, I was sad to see him go. But it was years of it. We've got the summer hit Swamp A-Word. Is Sailor Twift a bot, which is one of my boys' favorites. Tacos Again, about the conversation deciding where to go for dinner. Throat Coat, which is a homage to the indomitable Dan Mandis. And Matt's personal favorite, Creamy Wheat. I found that strange that he wanted a romance song about creamy wheat being the love interest of bacon. And that's a song.
See, I don't find it strange at all. I think it explains Matt perfectly.
And 1503, let's see. If you let AI put all of that together, you didn't write anything. Don't even get me started on the topic. I don't have to because I wrote it. I can't sing, can't play music, so it put that part to it, but I wrote it. Very much so. So don't get me started either, because I understand that there are folks in the AI world that are anti-AI on everything, which I get. Totally fine. But I think I love it when y'all give song names. 5354 says, "How about pull my pork?"
Oh,
we got to keep it safe for the kids. We got to keep it safe for the kids. But I'll let you guys know. I'm sure Matt will let you know. We want it to be a fun thing, and Men of Valor is a fantastic ministry that does so much for folks, and so getting the idea from their breakfast, even if it was a funny little thing. But yes, the voices on the line should be my theme song. Well, that's fair. And again, so many of y'all, I can't repeat a lot of this stuff on the air. You got to keep it safe for the kids. I got to be honest, on this Good Friday, I'm watching CNN and some of the feigned outrage on stuff. They had David Hogg on a while back, and as long as that guy is like the poster child for Democrats, folks, Republicans are going to be just fine. Don't you worry. I did find I like weird, funny polls, and on the interwebs, let's see if I can find it. Yep, here it is. This is a national survey that Cato Institute did in 2024. It was in the Financial Times, and I thought this was actually kind of hilarious. Dutch oven delight. That's interesting. This is the poll. America would be better off if more people worked in manufacturing. 80% of Americans agree. 20% disagree. Makes sense. Okay. Next question. I would be better off if I worked in a factory. 25% of Americans agree. 73% disagree. 2% currently work in a factory. So, when we're talking about some of these issues, it's important to get a practical pulse on what's actually happening. And guys, we really sometimes are very inconsistent in our views. That would be chief among them in this manufacturing, free trade conversation, because we'd be better off if we had more of this. None of us want to do it, but we would be better off. Well, yeah, but somebody had to do that. So the bottom line is it's a bizarre time. Let's put it that way. I did not finish my lament on Congress, so I think I'll do that. I went to govtrack.us. It tracks bills and stuff. Okay. The 118th Congress, that's January 3rd, 2023 through January 3rd, 2025, enacted legislation. So this is enacted and enacted via incorporation. So that's like a legislative bill that was incorporated into an omnibus. 614, 3% of the introduced pieces of legislation. I'll have you guessing what that percentage is currently in the 119th Congress when we come back. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Well, we are truly short timers on this segment. That's my fault, guys. I got excited, the back and forth, and then all of a sudden, well, there we were. But I will go back to my point and answer it real quick. 11. That's the answer. In the current Congress since January, that's the number of pieces of enacted legislation that has become law. 11. Let me say that again. 11. They've passed 127 resolutions, 108 legislative items got a vote, and they've got 4,891 pieces of other legislation. But the enacted legislation, including incorporation, which means they fold like a bunch of pieces into something bigger, 11. And if you don't count the individual pieces in something bigger, it's 5. 5. So when I say they're doing nothing, I mean that, but from the bottom of my heart. They're introducing bills that are sitting there and messaging on them and saying we're doing stuff. They're not, folks. They're hosing us. And if you want to see the most liberal government in the history of the world take place, take the vacancies that Doge and Donald Trump are creating with a liberal president. Just watch. We got to take a break. We'll finish this one strong when we come back. It's Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back, folks, to the Matt Murphy Show. We are running out of time. It is 6:38 in the p.m. on this Good Friday, and it is great indeed. And y'all have been so much fun today. 3174 on the SuperTalk text line says 40 eastbound before Briley Parkway is clear. There's no more wreck or emergency vehicles. I still remember when I was coming into the radio several months ago, and there was a boat on fire in the middle of 65.
A boat?
A boat on fire in the middle of Interstate 65. And I couldn't even explain that to people. I'm like, yeah, there is a boat that's on fire on the highway, and it's holding up traffic. People are like, a what? A boat.
If you don't want a comm camera, just say you don't.
Just, I called in and it was like, who is this guy? Is he smoking crack? And the answer is no. Crack's bad for you, obviously. But you know what's great? Dinosaurs. And we have discussed this. American capitalism can bring Jurassic Park to life. And I am here for it. And I know some of you are saying this is a bad idea, and that you have seen a movie of the same name, and it didn't end well. But this will be different because it's not a movie. And so it'll be fine. They have the dire wolves contained on a large preserve in a secret location, and I suspect they will do that with the mammoths. When they do it with the velociraptors, though, we should know where that place is, because that's when that's the part. They're smart.
It could go south quickly.
Yeah, they're real smart. Forget the big giant dinosaur fish thing. We don't have water in Tennessee of that size. Not a threat. Velociraptors, however, are bad. They don't want to be your friend, even the good ones. It's not a thing. Let's see. We had a funny from 5718. Well, clearly rhinos are going to put rhinos in their place on holidays. Man, what a disappointment the station has become. I mean, well, somebody's not having a good Friday. It's an awful Friday. In fact, it's very sad. I actually think that when my next piece comes out over at the Tennessean, I hope you guys check it out, because it's a different take on where we are as a country. I mentioned Thomas Friedman of the New York Times, been a columnist since I was literally born, has written so long, but he points back to foreign affairs, a 1970s economic policy. He's very critical of Trump, which is fine. I mean, people can be critical, but said he's never been more afraid for America's future. And I don't think we have to be negative. And I understand a lot of MAGA folks and a lot of Republicans are like, why would we be negative? This is awesome. I think the answer is the whiplash between Joe Biden doing nothing, and I mean asleep at the wheel. We saw his capacity. I'm not saying his staff didn't do stuff, but his administration in terms of actions, very low. It really makes me think that that's where we need to figure it out. That's where we need to change the game and say, we don't like this anymore. We want to get off this ride. The back and forth, that's tremendous. And I like what Trump's doing. I like a lot of it. As I said earlier, I very much think due process should be respected, but the executive branch will always add to its own power. Trump is very unique in that he's cutting the branch that he manages. Most executives try to say, I need more power, I got to do more stuff. Thank you on the SuperDog text line for bringing me back to focus. There are only 5 bills that Congress has enacted to law. Only 5 bills. Now, there's some other bills in the bills, so if you add those together, you get 11. But I'm just going to tell you what they are. We started off hot. We had the Lakin Riley Act, S5. Senator Katie Britt, my friend, a Great job with that one. That was introduced January 6th, signed January 29th. Then we had a resolution of disapproval for an EPA rule relating to waste emissions charge for petroleum and natural gas systems. Sounds exciting. Signed into law March 14th. We had a resolution of disapproval for a rule submitted by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management relating to protection of marine archaeological resources. I don't know who doesn't get excited about that. That was March 14th. March 15th was the full year continuing appropriations and extensions act. And then we had one other resolution of disapproval. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your Congress, folks, since January, 5 pieces of legislation into law. And I'm not saying that you inherently have to make lots of laws, but it's also kind of the job. You can make laws that repeal government. You can make laws that shrink things, get rid of stuff. That isn't happening. It's just not. In fact, this is Thomas Massey's point. I looked, he was pointing out that tax cuts without spending cuts are a train wreck. And I was looking, because I'm a dork, at some of the Treasury debt auctions. This is federal debt and what the rates are for the debt. So CBO projects that Washington's average interest rate is around 3.5%, but we're seeing 4% to 4.8% rates, and it's rising. Why does that matter? Well, if our interest rate goes up, the amount of money that's already pretty close, I think it just hit $1 trillion a year in net interest payments. The amount of money we have to pay to service our debt goes up astronomically, because even small percentage increases applied to such a large amount of debt crowd out other spending. So I know that it's not popular to talk about fiscal conservatism, but guys, we're in a bad situation here. The acquisition of debt that we have to get to keep this whole thing going is going up, and we're talking about tax cuts. Doge is going to have to cut a lot more for those tax cuts to make a whole lot of sense. That's just the truth. And I told you earlier in the show, I hate taxes. I hate paying taxes. I hate doing my taxes. I think it's absolutely silly that we have a system where you do your taxes, you kind of guess, you may get wrong, and they may audit you, and then if you get that wrong, you may go to jail. And no, I do not want a system where the government just gives me a figure and says, trust us, you owe us this. But it's ridiculous that most people struggle with their taxes. We've literally created a whole cottage industry of software designed to make giving the government your money easier for you. I mean, that's so messed up. That's just bizarre. But I digress. We get into a point where we can't afford this anymore. And we say these things and nobody listens. We say we're spending out the yin-yang, nobody listens. We're now at a point where if we don't take this seriously and really rein in our spending, then we're just not going to be able to afford it, literally. Because when those interest payments go up, when we got to pay more for the debt, hey, if it's 2.5%, 3%, then, we can ride that for a while. You start to get to 5%. When you're at 5%, you're getting that higher than, some people's mortgages. Those of y'all that are holding on to those mortgages for a while after these rates went up. But you're higher than the mortgage on a home, and that's what the federal government's got to borrow. I mean, folks, that is a dicey proposition. And, Patrick says something that makes sense. He says, until our government controls their spending, It will never end until it ends. Yeah, I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but you just get to a point where you can't borrow, where you don't have the resources to borrow, or you're having to borrow so much more just to service the debt and do the spending you want. So we're in this $2 to $3 trillion a year deficit land. We've been averaging close to 2. We're bumping back up into COVID land, but it's not because of a pandemic. It's because we can't do debt. We don't understand how it works. And it's funny money. And we believe that we'll never be held to account for it. We got to take a break. We'll come in and finish strong. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. The end is near. Not of Congress, but of the show. And our debt accumulation doesn't look like it's going anywhere. And several of y'all have made the good point. What do we do? Blow it up? Start over? Well, one, please no. Let's not blow things up. That's really frowned upon. But at some point, we just need to be honest about the fact that Republicans really are bad at spending cuts. I know the first knee-jerk reaction is to point out the Democrats are even worse. Fair. I'm not arguing. But when Republicans get control, they just never quite do it like they say they would before they get control. I mean, that's the problem. We have reached the point where Republicans have won, they've got the power, and they're sitting there. I mean, this is truly what's happening. And these spending reductions, look, the debt accumulated by Donald Trump and the debt accumulated by Joe Biden, like under their respective administrations, was pretty close. I mean, it was a ton. And Trump has said he's not a fiscal conservative. So at some point, he didn't say he's not a fiscal conservative. He just said, I'm not a conservative, which is fine. But at some point, we have to have that conversation and say, are we going to rein in spending? I understand that DOGE is cutting personnel. I understand that they're trying to rein in the bureaucracy. You got to rein in the money too, because payroll is part of it, but the big part of it is the government contracts. It is the money that flows out. I mean, think about it. At just Harvard and Columbia and these schools, we're talking about billions of dollars just at those schools. That's how much of a problem we have on the spending side. And then the problem is, why do we keep doing it? Well, because when you stop the spending, people get mad. Even conservatives. Well, I really like that school. That was Vanderbilt University you cut. My kids went to school there. I went to school there. How dare you? They were studying an important medical thing. The truth is, we laugh at some of the silly things we fund, but there are a lot of serious things we fund too. And there are economic consequences for making those choices. That when you cut government spending, it has an economic impact, which is why I think it was a misstep on the tariffs, not because it's not a good negotiating tool or, we won't ultimately at the end of the day get to a place where we have better trade deals. It's because I think the first order concern was we have spending that's out of control. And so now if you take the impact of tariffs and you then layer on top of that, we're going to radically retract spending. You have the recipe for an economic disaster. And guess what? Democrats will sweep the midterms and then win the next election. Promise. It's just how the economy works. People care about a lot of stuff. They care about the economy first. They care about what happens to them and their families economically. If you take nothing away from the last several hours, take that away. If you can have good economic outcomes, people will support you. Not perfectly and not always, but you got wind in your sails. If you don't, then you don't have a chance to govern. And so a lot of Republicans have just said, okay, fine. I don't really care. If we're going to deficit spend indefinitely, we can keep political control as long as we don't ever actually address any of the issues. That's the reason Trump very clearly and repeatedly, when it's Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, we need to reform those programs. He's like, nope, not touching them, no cuts. All right. Then you can only do so much through personnel. We got to figure that out. This has been a great Friday for me. I hope it's been really awesome for you too. I love having the back and forth when we agree, when we disagree. Just remember, Romans 5:8. But God showed his love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That's what made it a good Friday. That's what makes it a great Friday. And then when we celebrate Easter, man, it's the rest of the Christmas story. Y'all have seen that, and it's the truth. I wish you and your families well. Hug your loved ones. have some fun, eat some good food, and make sure that you love the people around you. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.